Everyday Juggler, your source for juggling highlights, interviews, tutorials, and reviews. And now your host, Sean Livingston.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Everyday Juggler Profiles. Today we get to hang out with Bronkar Lee. Bronkar, I was wondering if you could start us off with a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how long you've been juggling, and what you're most excited about in your juggling career right now. And also, thanks so much for being with us.
Right on. It's great to be here, brother. So I started juggling about 15 years ago, originally from Athens, Georgia. And I saw a guy in the park juggling, and I was like, whoa, what's that, man? And he was like, it's juggling. And I was like, can you teach me? And then he did. His name was Andy McIntyre, really nice guy. And so he taught me how to juggle. He took a few minutes out of his time and showed me the 3-ball cascade, so 2 balls and such. And then I just picked it up, and it was, for me, total immersion from the beginning. I literally stayed up all night, and juggled. And I had 3 tennis balls, and I just started, juggling those and started bouncing them and just making stuff up, and just fell in love with the art. I mean, immediately, as just a personal growth type thing, and just accessing a new part of my brain, I guess. And then I've toured and lived in different places, and kind of, have juggled with a lot of cool people, and just seen some incredible performers and some incredible jugglers. And just, I guess, for me, the biggest inspirational thing currently is just seeing where other people are going with juggling now. There's just this whole new generation of juggling, and it's just really blowing my mind. And I was at the IJA this summer in Quebec City, and it was amazing. Just an amazing town, amazing experience, amazing organization. I love the IJA, and just the creativity that's happening, and the community of it is I guess that's probably my biggest inspiration right now. Yeah.
That's awesome. So you said you were walking in a park and you saw somebody juggling?
Yeah, I was walking on campus at UGA, University of Georgia.
Okay.
And and that's where I really saw my first live juggler.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And from then on, you were just like full force. You just thought it was the best thing ever.
Full engagement, man. It was the way I learned personally with anything is total immersion, and I'm a bit what do they call it, OCD, so a bit obsessive compulsive, and when I see something that I'm interested in, I really just become that thing, and juggling was that immediately, and I got really obsessive about it, and then I went to my first juggling convention or festival in Atlanta. It was the Groundhog Day festival, and I went there, and I bought some bean bags. I bought 4 bean bags, and I even got like the discounted ones that had like some logo on there that had absolutely no relevance at all to juggling. It was some like corporate logo or something. But I got those bean bags, man, and I wore those things out. And I remember when I first saw the 2 main influences for me when I was first learning was I saw Viktor Kee on a Cirque du Soleil, and I was like, that was both inspiring and despiring because I was like, well, okay, that sets the bar really high. And because ultimately we always compare ourselves to other people. That's what we do. We're human. And so I was like, all right, well, that guy like moves like a cat. He can catch balls in places that I don't even know I have. And he's a phenomenal like juggler, so, but what I loved about him was his presentation, his bit, his show. He had cross-pollinated different art forms, and he was a phenomenal dancer and acrobat and juggler, and that's what attracted me so much to his act and his style of juggling. And then the next person I saw was Michael Moschen, or Moschen, and he just blew my mind open. And immediately when I had, like I mentioned, I had tennis balls because I was a tennis player. I've been a tennis player for years, and I had tennis balls, just what I had around, at first. And I immediately started bouncing the balls because it just made sense to me to bounce. I was like, why don't I just bounce them? And I remember I had like a piece of plywood in my parents' garage, and I just set up the plywood and started bouncing against the plywood and angled it to where it kind of, created this cool arc coming back to me. And then I saw Michael Moschen, and then I was like, oh, okay. So what I'm doing with this piece of plywood really isn't that innovative or cool. And I saw his classic triangle act, and then I researched it more, saw some other stuff, and he just blew my mind open and immediately showed me what was possible. And I think that's what mentors do, is they show us what's possible, and then they give us the visual of oh, we are as human beings capable of doing something like that. And so that's what those two particular gentlemen did for me.
Where did you see Michael Moschen the first time?
Oh gosh, good question. It must have been like a VHS tape.
Okay.
Because this was pre-YouTube. I mean, now, you got everything. It's like, what do you want to learn? Oh, cool. You can see 100 incredible jugglers online, and you're like, oh, this, and there's tutorials and everything. This must have been a VHS. I can even remember the VHS kind of like, like VHSs used to, they would kind of like have little glitches in them, and it'd be like, and I remember like in the middle of his routine, it did that. But, I think I saw him, I know it was the PBS special, and it might have even been like a live, like a rerun of it on national TV.
All right. Yeah. That's awesome. And one of the things you said is when you saw Viktor Kee, it was inspiring and despiring. And because, you realized what you had to live up to, or, not necessarily you have to be as good as Viktor Kee, but how did you get past that hump? Like for me, and I think probably others, there's not really any videos of me juggling on YouTube because I'm constantly seeing all these fantastic jugglers every week. It's kind of like what I do in all my spare time. So it's like, well, there's no reason for me to post because it's nothing like that. So how did you get past that?
Oh man, it's a great question, bro. I think it's, I've always been kind of one of those people where it's just like, okay, here I am, I'm here. And I always think of like my starting point whenever I'm learning anything. And I'm like, well, I'm here. And, this particular person has obviously dedicated a lot of time and energy, which is, of course, the original definition of Kung Fu, which is time and energy equals mastery, no matter what skill you want to learn. And, here's a person that's clearly done that. And, I guess just breaking it back to the basics of this is where I'm at. I'm inspired by this. I'm a human. So why not just, learn from him? I don't really know how to answer your question directly. I've since then, I have developed more metacognition since then. And I have a very specific learning style that I've created, a formula that I've created, which may be more applicable.
Well, you can talk about that if you want.
Yeah, because my belief in that learning is that, of course, we have natural tendencies as human beings, natural gifts or talents. We're born wired a certain way or with a certain personality or whatnot. But, the whole nature versus nurture thing and how we learn what we learn and how we're influenced. And clearly that plays a role because we have YouTube. We see these amazing jugglers. We know what's possible, If we just had balls laying there and we had no reference point, we wouldn't think to pick all balls up and throw them. It just doesn't work like that. So it's a constant evolution. But for me, I always now when I learn, I look at my starting point, where I'm at right now in this moment. And that forces me to be present to see, okay, where am I at here currently? And then I look at, I create a safe space or an environment where I can make mistakes because there's a certain amount of vulnerability. And I think that's what you're kind of speaking to here is there's a certain amount of vulnerability involved with learning any new skill, especially as an adult where we're not, we're conditioned to have a job and be great at that job. And we're not really in tune or in touch with that vulnerable side of like learning and being students of life or students of anything. It's like, so we've put up these walls or barriers. And then I believe in surrounding myself with senseis, mentors and masters. And I think with that, you see them, you witness them, you absorb them, and then you become them. And that's what I always I always like to do is to surround myself with that energy, with that knowledge, that intellect, and then have that kind of rub off on you. And actually, one person that's done that for me majorly is somebody you've interviewed on this podcast or on your show before, which is David Nair. And David Nair blew my mind open as far as his perspective and precision involving rhythmic juggling and musical juggling, which is kind of one of my like specialties. And so then you surround yourself with those senseis, those masters, and then you absorb some of them. And then I think there's looking at what skills you already have, what strengths you already have, and how you can apply yourself to the current skill that you're trying to learn. So for me, like when I was learning juggling, 15 years ago, I was already a very proficient drummer and musician, and so I had logged a lot of hours developing and cultivating the skill of drumming. And so I took that precision of my perspective of rudiments and timing and tempo and all this stuff, eye-hand coordination, and I applied it to my juggling. And and I've created a language around that I call beat bounce, which is all about cross-pollinating rhythm and juggling and creating different routines and practice routines to a metronome and to specific music and different time signatures and things like that. So showing up with those skills that I already had. So I wasn't really starting juggling, from scratch. I already had things that I could apply to it. And I think we all have that. We all have a certain level of mastery in something else, and we can apply that to anything. And anything's relevant. At least, if anything, it's the discipline and the mindset and the practice that maybe you've created in developing another skill. And then the next thing is really a shift. There's a shift that happens, and it's a mental shift that has to happen. And I believe it surrounds our perspective, our belief on what failure is, and looking at failure as an opportunity and a process of a growing pain more than just a fail, like I did it or I didn't, I'm good or I'm bad, I'm right or I'm wrong. But looking at it as a growing pain and a process. There's a process to failure, and there's a way to fail to where you are extracting this lesson out of it, and you're experiencing this drop or this whatever it is. I mean, juggling is such a great representation of that because you see the drop, you know what I mean? But if you're like me, you get balls that bounce, so they come right back.
Or they bounce really far away.
Yeah, right. Oh my God. Yeah. Seriously. So I think there's a shift that has to happen mentally to look at this failure as actually an opportunity and a learning experience, and to try to surround yourself with more and more failure, because those are actually the moments, the painful moments that you're growing and you're learning. So then there's that shift, and then the final one is what I call Showdown. Or Showtime, and I call it this because Showtime is that moment where maybe you're presenting it or something like that. It's a literal showtime, but the Showdown it's a showdown with yourself, and it's something that goes on internally, and it's a sense of especially with juggling or any skill that you're learning, but especially juggling. It's about clearing your mind and creating that space to just really relax and to allow the moment to happen. You've worked really hard at practicing all these different patterns, and you've drilled, and then it's about really allowing that moment to happen. And so that could be metaphorically, but it also could be literally for showtime as well. In my case, as a professional entertainer and stuff. But yeah, so there's that showdown with yourself of kind of getting over yourself, releasing it's almost like I talk to my ego and I say, okay, ego, I got this. It's okay. You can relax now. It's all good. I'm just going to be present right now, and I'm going to allow the moment to happen. So that's what that's my system that I've created. And it's in the formula is kind of the 6 S's to success, which is in any skill you want to learn. Or develop. That's a formula that I've used and applied to a lot of different things. Obviously, primarily juggling in this context, but to learning to play saxophone, learning to play piano, learning to drum, learning to anything. So
The six X's of success. 6 S's of success. Can you say them all in a row?
Six S's. Yeah. So 6 S's are so number one is your starting point. So where are you at currently? Number two is your safe space, or what I call the womb of creativity, to create that environment to where you're able to make those mistakes and be present in them. The third one is senseis. Surrounding yourself with mentors and masters so that you can witness, absorb, and then become. Then the fourth one is your strengths or your skills, what you're showing up with already, the tools, the life skills and tools that you already have that you can apply to the current task or mission that's at hand. And then your fifth one is the shift, the mental shift that happens, and your perception of failure and looking at it as an opportunity or a lesson, as opposed to just some destructive thing, And then the sixth and final one is Showtime or Showdown, which is that mental clearing, finding your Zen place, and allowing. Yeah.
That's an awesome formula, and I just want to make note that normally people have to pay to hear those successes. So,
yeah.
So thanks for sharing. Everybody's getting a good deal.
Yeah, brother.
As you were talking about kind of the mind shift, something I was thinking about that the way I've thought about things often, getting over that hump I was talking about, is when I think about if somebody's good at something, anything, it's not the fact that they can do it that makes them good. It's the fact that they're working towards what's next that makes them good. It's the fact that they're always looking to get to that next spot. So, and I think that, obviously when you're performing, that's not the case. But when it comes to a juggling community, sharing things, that I think applies well.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I just wanted to chime in, if I may, that performance is a completely different skill set than like juggling or practicing. Like they're not even the same at all. Practicing and doing drills and exercises and developing discipline and consistency and that sense of mastery, like time and energy equals mastery, kung fu. That's a completely different mindset, and to me, it's a completely different shade of my personality, of my human personality, which I believe we all have different shades of personalities. Everybody's like, "Oh, you're an extrovert or an introvert." Well, yeah, but we all have introverted sides and extroverted sides, and I'm more in the extroverted sides. Obviously, you can tell by just talking to me for 20 minutes. I'm extroverted, but I also have an introverted side, and so that mode of being is completely different than the entertainment mode of being. And in fact, just the skills that I have cultivated, or I believe one needs to cultivate to be a successful entertainer, is a completely different skill set. It's a skill set of how to be with an audience, how to present yourself to an audience. It's just a completely different mode. And when I also just on a personal, like, compositional wise, or compositionally, when I'm drilling stuff for myself or I'm doing stuff for myself, it's completely different than when I'm doing something for an audience. Because when I'm doing something for an audience, I want to develop something that's going to be that's going to take them through a journey, and it's going to be relatable to them. So I'm going to probably break things down to a more elementary level, to where it's like, because unless you're performing obviously at a juggling convention or for a group of people that speak this language of juggling, you're performing for people who don't speak it. And so it's the same thing as if you were to go to a show and the whole thing is in Japanese, and it's like, you don't speak Japanese. It's like, and you just start blabbing in Japanese. It's like, there's going to be an immediate disconnect. There's going to be like, oh, I just hear tons of words. I don't know any of this. I don't understand it. But if you break it down and you're like, dwi. I don't speak Japanese, by the way. I'm making this up. But you're like, dwi mai. You're like, dwi mai. Oh, I get it. That's 1, 2, 3. You know what I mean? Or whatever. You start to create that language with them, and they're with you regardless of if they speak the language or not. So it's a completely different mindset of when I'm, creating something for an audience. And then the practice for that is, man, I'm taking a 3-minute act or a 8-minute act or whatever your act is, and I'm drilling that, man. And I'm drilling it. I'm working on transitions. I'm working where I'm looking, how I'm breathing. there's so many, you can really take your microscope out and zoom in and analyze that and see that there's a whole microcosmos inside of that 3-minute act. But I'm drilling that act and making that automatic, because when I go live, my personal belief is that I want that act to be in like automaticity mode, on autopilot. So then I'm able to be present in the moment and engage with my audience, or engage with my music, or engage with my environment. And so I want that to be automatic. Whereas when I'm over here in this other mode of practicing, of jamming, of drilling, I'm trying to do the like you said, the next level. I'm trying to work on incorporating that 8th ball or that 9th ball or that 2nd ball, wherever you're at, but I'm looking at that next skill because I'm wanting to raise my ceiling. And I'm also drilling stuff, I'm also doing drills, and I'm trying things that I've never done before, or that I would like to learn. And so it's a completely different place of vulnerability, and practice mode. It's that practice mode versus performance mode, I suppose. Yeah.
That's awesome. You mentioned David Nair being kind of one of your senseis, and I just wanted to talk about him for a little bit.
Please. I can talk about him for hours, man. David's awesome. Yeah.
So obviously he continues to blow minds everywhere with what he's able to do. I wish he got more attention, but he's just putting out really technical videos. So I guess that only appeals to some of us. So tell me, since you've been working with him, how has he impacted the way you juggle?
Wow. David Nair has influenced me in a major way. I met him several years ago at the Austin Juggling Convention, the Juggling Festival in Austin, Texas. And Jim Maxwell brought me in to perform at it. And he saw me as a little, whenever he asks me a question, I'm going to give you way more information than necessary. But I like to do that.
Okay.
Okay, cool. I like to backtrack things. And so Jim Maxwell saw me performing on the pier at Pier 39 in San Francisco. And he was like, "Hey, yeah, you're not a bad juggler, but what I love about you is you're really weird and different. I think you should come to our festival and perform." And I was like, "Cool, man."
That's funny coming from a juggler, right?
Yeah, I know, right? So I came in and Jim brought me in, and then I did my show, and it was great, and I had a blast, and it was a lot of fun. And then after the show, I did a workshop the next day on rhythmic juggling. And at the rhythmic juggling workshop, David Nair shows up. And here's this guy, this dude showing up, and I can tell he's a pretty smart guy and a pretty great juggler, very strong juggler. And after the workshop, he's like, "Hey, I really enjoyed your workshop." He's like, "I have some ideas or some suggestions. Are you open to them?" And this is also like another pivotal moment, I think, as a human being that is looking to learn and grow on a regular basis. That's any of us. There's these moments in life that happen where you have somebody that approaches you in a moment that may seem vulnerable and may seem like, "Whoa, who's this guy like giving me feedback on my workshop? Like, what's that all about? I'm the master here. I'm the teacher." But it's these moments, and I find that every time I surrender my ego again, once again coming back to that, I surrender my ego to these moments, I really put myself in a place where I'm open and receptive to some pretty incredible information. And so I'm constantly checking myself. I have a mental check where it's like, there's some modes that I go into, again, these modes where I'm a facilitator, I'm a leader, I'm a master at whatever I'm delivering here. And then there's these other modes where I'm a student, I'm a listener. And I find that the more and more I live, these moments just blur together more and more. And it's just this kind of way of being for me. But just to be aware of that for myself is important. And so there's this moment where there's David Nair, and he's like, "I'd love to give you some suggestions on your workshop." And I'm like, "Okay." And so he just goes into this whole thing, and he starts talking about, like, he just goes deep, man. And if anybody is listening or watching this, they know, if they know David, man, he goes deep right away. And I love that. And so he just went deep right away. I mean, he had a freaking big old snow shovel, and he's like plowing in. He's like, "Here we go, buddy." So, and then 3 hours later, here we are, So he immediately like gave me some very cool feedback on rhythmic juggling, and then we got to talking more and more, and I realized he's developed a bit of a language himself around the rhythmic or musical juggling, and I think the main thing, the first main thing that he influenced me on was the force bounce.
Mm-hmm.
And for any bounce juggler that's listening, they know what the force bounce is. And I didn't know, I didn't really know what a force bounce was or a lift bounce or anything. And I want to also break this down, speaking of breaking things down to an elementary level, because there's probably I'm assuming a lot of jugglers watching and chiming into this. But I'm assuming that probably a lot of those jugglers may have never bounce juggled or don't have a lot of experience bounce juggling. And basically with bounce juggling, there's these two main ways. This is kind of like the black and white. There's a force bounce and a lift bounce. And however, the more I've juggled, the more I've cultivated a language, developed a language that goes into much more detail than just a lift bounce or a force bounce. But the quick and dirty version is a lift bounce. You toss the ball up, and then gravity pulls it down. So it has a greater arc. It comes up and then down, and it's a slower tempo generally because you're lifting it. You're essentially toss juggling it, and then it's coming down, bouncing, and then coming back to your hand. Whereas a force bounce, you're actually doing a palm down, and you're forcing it to the ground, and then it's just coming back up. So it's generally a bit faster, quicker. And so I was just kind of bounce juggling before I met David. And then David was like, hey, try this technique. And he sets me up, and he has this whole system for learning where you put your legs together, and all about the stance and the way you stand, the way you hold yourself, and which is enormous. Body posture, as for advanced jugglers out there, body posture is huge. Like the way you hold yourself, the way you stand, or the way you move for that matter, is huge. I also studied Chinese acrobatics, and my Chinese acrobatics teacher would always say, tuck tummy, squeeze butt. And so it's all about tuck tummy, squeeze butt. So you're engaged, but you're loose, and your knees are loose, and you're supple, and you're in this kind of ready position where it's going to be effortless. So your body's alive and warm, and you're there, but you're not tense and tight. You're not trying to force anything, even though you are force bouncing. Super, whatever. So anyway, he showed me the force bounce, and when he showed me the force bounce, it opened up my world to this knowledge of what I'm doing with my hands, what I'm doing with my body. Because before I was just kind of like looking at the balls, right? And I was just essentially putting my brain in the ball and making the ball do this or making the ball do that or tossing it there. And I wasn't thinking about what I was doing here, with my hands, with my feet, with my legs. And this was a big one, bro, with my breath. Oh my God. That was another huge thing that David showed me and this was years later before I learned this, and I'm fast forwarding a bit. I'm jumping around. I'm super ADD, so just get over it, man. No, so I bounce around all over. So you have to bring me back in every once in a while. My thought process is generally not on a linear.
I can only imagine what a conversation with you and David Nair is like.
Yeah, we never really get anywhere, but we have a great time. So fast forward years later, I'm trying to set a world record. I'm trying to break David's world record with a 7-ball force bounce. And he's coaching me on how to break his record, which just says so much about David. And this is the way I think, God, I just wish we could all live our lives like this. And that's what I love about the IJA and the juggling community, is that it's all about empowering each other and taking these skills that we know and sharing them. That's what I love to do. And this comes back to that releasing of the ego again. And it's all about us, not me. It's not me, it's us. And it's us elevating together, evolving together, growing together, becoming better together. And the more we share, the more we get, because giving is getting. And David's just a super generous person. And so he's coaching me on how to break his world record, which is hilarious. And so I'm trying to break through, and I'm doing the 7-ball force bounce, and I'm getting to around, I don't know, like I can't remember what the numbers were. I want to say somewhere around 300 bounces, and it's like 30 seconds or something like that. And that's just, don't quote me on that. It's not exact. I'd have to revisit my actual notes to see what that is. But and I'm like, and then the pattern just falls apart. And he's like, well, are you getting tired? And I'm like, no, I'm not tired at all. I'm like totally in it. And he's like, was your rhythm going off? And I'm like, no, not at all. I'm like in it. And he's like, are you breathing?
Mm.
Whoa. Breathing. That's what I'm not doing. He's like, no, I don't think I am. He's like, yeah, you're holding your. And so I go back in, man, and I start to breathe, and immediately, like within like the first run or 5, it's like right away, I like doubled my pad. I mean, I like had a huge breakthrough.
That's awesome.
And so, yeah, so that was a big thing. And then I will just say this to close on that, and then I know you have another question that's going to reel me back in from like Pluto, or I guess we can keep it in this galaxy. I'd prefer to be somewhere else, but reel me back in, and that's I did break David's record. I want to say I did break his record. However, the same day that I broke his record, he shattered his previous record and like went up like 100 tosses or something ridiculous. And so it was like I can't remember if I actually had like an hour or a half a day of like breaking his record and having the record, the world record, or if he had actually broke it like the day before and just hadn't told me or something. But I remembered I was so excited to tell him, and he was like, "Oh yeah, by the way, I shattered that record." Like, no.
Yeah, why do you think he was coaching you through it? He was like, "Yeah, I just need another challenge."
Yeah. And what's cool, I just want to note, and then letting you ask that question, but I also just want to note the power of taking that time and sharing with people and being a mentor. The power of that is just, that's everything, man. That's life. That's just everything. We would know nothing if we didn't learn from mentors. That's why we speak English. That's why we walk. That's why we juggle. It's like we're exposed to these mentors and these teachers and these senseis that take the time to give us their energy and their essence and their life force and their knowledge, and then we take that and run with it. And now this is just an example of what David did for me by taking that time and giving me his expertise. I'm now cultivating that and speaking that in this moment. And in a sense, he is living through me. His energy and knowledge is living through me and going into whoever may be listening to this podcast or watching this and absorbing something from that. This is David's knowledge and wisdom coming through me and living. And I just want to acknowledge that, because to me, it's always very important of backtracking where that thought comes from, where that creativity comes from, that innovation, that new move, that new idea, and backtracking that and paying homage essentially to the process of how that has come to manifest.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's really great. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about how juggling has been a part of kind of your career, your livelihood. When did that start, and why did it start? How did it start?
All right. My first gig, my first performance opportunity with juggling was with my friend Curtis Malcolm. And that was right after I learned how to juggle, actually. It happened really quickly, and we had an opportunity to perform for a deaf children's camp, a camp for hearing impaired children. And I seized the opportunity, even though I was a pretty pathetic juggler at the time. So the very first juggling opportunity for me was with a friend of mine, Curtis Malcolm, who taught me or influenced me on how to juggle years ago. And we performed for a deaf children's camp in Georgia. And I was not a very good juggler at the time, but I used this opportunity to strengthen my juggling and show And in the moment, it was fascinating to me because I'd been a performing musician for years before that, and logged a lot of hours on stage and stuff. But through this moment, I had never expressed myself with juggling, and so I learned a lot about the communication with audience and such. And anyway, I'm not going to get off on a tangent with that, but I took the lesson from this opportunity, and then I just kind of rolled with it. And then I went to the San Francisco Circus Center, moved across the country, and studied at the San Francisco Circus Center with Jeff Raz and the Clown Conservatory out there, and learned a ridiculous amount about facilitation and how to be with an audience. And I incorporated juggling immediately into my shows because it was something that I picked up relatively naturally. And once again, that was, applying my successes of success was, bringing other skills to the table. And I learned quickly because I had already had a lot of wiring from drumming and tennis and different things like that. So I picked up on it pretty quickly and then incorporated it quite naturally into performing. However, there's a big difference once again with performance versus practice, and that's overcoming performance anxiety and how to channel and harness and channel that energy of nerves. And there's a lot of techniques I've developed around that. But incorporating juggling into the show was something I did from the beginning, really. And since then, I've used it in a lot of different forms. I would say I really don't do any traditional juggling in my shows. I do a little bit of toss juggling, but what I do it very musically, and I do it also somewhat comedically as well, in a very self-deprecating form. And then I also do it to like live music that I'm creating in the moment, playing my voice and different instruments and stuff like that. And then I also use it in my specialty, which is actually the way I really developed my one-man show, which is my rhythmic juggling or beat bouncing. And I do inverted juggling on custom drums that I build. And then I cross-pollinate vocal percussion or beatboxing along with that. Mm-hmm. And so that's a very large part of my performance, and that's how a lot of my show has been built from there. And in fact, most of the shows that I do at this point are longer shows. Generally, there might be 20 minutes or a half hour or 60 minutes or 90 minutes. Or I've done 3-hour shows, which I don't know why anybody would want to watch 3 hours on stage. But I've done long engagements like that. But when I'm hired to do a shorter act, maybe it's 3 minutes or maybe it's 30 seconds. Like, when I was on the Tonight Show a couple of years ago, and when I did that, it was like, okay, you get 30 seconds. I was like, all right, 30 seconds. Wow, what am I going to do? But so with that, luckily, I take all the stuff that I'm working on, all the stuff that I can do, and I distill it down into a form that I call concentrated awesomeness. And so, just distill it down for like, what's my like concentrated awesomeness for 30 seconds. But or maybe I'm hired to come in as a 5-minute act or a 10-minute act or whatever. And then my beatbox juggling or beat bouncing is my specialty act that I deliver in that type of a situation.
Mm-hmm. So by kind of doing this hybrid of different skills, it's gained some attention. You mentioned the Tonight Show. How did that? Did somebody see you at a show and were like, you know what, you'd be good for the Night Show, or did you seek that out, or how'd that go down?
Yeah, that's a great question, bro. So that came from, and once again, backtracking it, because I love backtracking things to where it all originated. And basically, no matter how I backtrack things, it all comes back to my mom because she gave birth to me. So thanks, Mom. You got me on the Tonight Show.
Yeah, my mom's the one that taught me to juggle, so I can relate to you there.
Dude, that's awesome. Yeah, that's so cool. Wow, she gave birth to you and taught you how to juggle. Man, you're so lucky. So I guess it kind of starts from the way I got on the Tonight Show was some of the talent scouts actually saw me doing a live show, and it was right after I had moved to LA, just a couple of months after I moved to Los Angeles. And I was doing a show opening for Justin Willman, who's a TV host. He hosted like Cupcake Wars and some other stuff, and he's a magician and does stage comedy and magic stuff. And I opened up for him, and we had a mutual friend, Stefan Haves, who's a director for Cirque du Soleil, and I had worked with Stefan on some projects, and Stefan recommended me to Justin, and so I opened up for Justin and at Club Nokia in Los Angeles. And then after the show, a couple of guys came up and they were like, "Hey, we really love your set." And I was like, "Oh, thanks, man." And they were like, "Yeah, would you want to be on the Tonight Show?" And I was like, "Is that really like does that need an answer? Like, do some people say no?" Right. And I'm like, "Yeah." And they said, "Cool, we love what you do. We're doing we'd love for you to be on the show, and we're doing a holiday theme. Could you incorporate like a Christmas song or a holiday song into your beatbox juggling?" And I said, "Absolutely." And so this was like, and then they were like, "Okay, cool. So we're going to have you on next week." And I was like, and it was that quick and it was that easy, that effortless. However, so I say that because I also got some enemies. I developed some enemies out of this because they were like, "You just moved to LA and you were on the Tonight Show, and what the heck?" And so we look at it as that, and this is kind of that classic thing of like overnight success or whatever that people have. And this is like that. This was one of those moments where it happened really fast and it happened really effortlessly. If you just look at that short series of events, right? But if you really zoom back and you take a broader perspective on it, I backtrack that all the way to actually an experience that I had on America's Got Talent, and I went on AGT, and the reason why I share this because this was almost like my boot camp, because I went on America's Got Talent, and this is when I'd been performing for a while, and I had some pretty good performance chops. I'd done a few thousand shows. Traveled around the world, across Canada, in Europe, and all this stuff. And I was like, I thought I was like pretty stanky. I was like, I got it, And they approached me again, and they brought me in, and they flew me in and put me up in a nice hotel and all this stuff. And I was like, man, I'm gonna rock this show. And then I went in, and within about 10 seconds, I was done. And it was complete failure. Got X right away. And in that moment, I took that moment to reflect and say, okay, what's the lesson in here, right? This was for me a failure, and this was the mind shift moment of why did I fail so epically right now? And it wasn't because I wasn't a good performer, because I'd done that. I had already been validated in that particular arena. My belief is that it was because I didn't have any experience in this particular environment, in this particular container, right, which was television. Mm-hmm. And there's a completely different a set of rules and structure and expectation in television. And for me, it was like, oh, you have 90 seconds to do your thing. And I was like, 90 seconds? Man, I do shows for 90 minutes. This will be easy. Mm-hmm. And so going in, I didn't know my audience. I'd never been in front of judges that were like validating me. And I had never been in this type of an environment before. And it's completely different. So whereas I had logged all these hours and other avenues, I'd never hear. And so I said, okay, well, how do I learn from this? And so I rearranged my thought process. I extracted the learning lesson out of it. And then I went to work. And that's when I started logging hours in that particular environment, in those types of locations, doing, lots of TV shows. I did, Good Day Sacramento, Good Morning shows, all over the place. And just getting experience being in front of a camera, how to present myself in front of a camera, whether that's setting up an iPhone, and doing my thing there, or if it was, creating opportunities where I'm in, with a studio audience, or on the, morning show or whatnot. So I created lots of opportunities to do that and to hone my material that works in that type of an environment. So then I did the work, and then fast forward to that moment where the Tonight Show, invited me on. There was a big moment in that we want to have you on, but a lot happened in that moment of the but. And that was, but we're doing a holiday theme, but you only have 30 seconds. But, and in that moment, there was something that had to shift again in my mind of saying, okay, ego, I got this. It's all good. 30 seconds. I've never done that before, but yes, I can do that. Holiday theme. I don't have that ready and prepared, but yes, I can do that. So then I was adaptable, flexible, malleable. I didn't have a fixed agenda in that moment. So I was able to say yes and then surrender myself because I had logged the hours. I knew I had an idea of what a studio audience was going to feel like and look like and smell like and taste like. And then I was also able to be present in the moment and then adapt to that present moment.
Mm-hmm. Great. Out of all the performances you've done so far, what one sticks out as the best experience or the most memorable?
Great. Yeah, good question. The most memorable experience and the most heightened energetically, mentally, physically, everything for me was when I played at Madison Square Garden, and I performed at Madison Square Garden for the halftime show for the Knicks and Celtics game. And man, that was some serious energy. Whoa. A lot of things happened to me in this moment. A lot of things on a personal level. First of all, playing at Madison Square Garden is just freaking crazy and awesome and cool and incredible and daunting. I mean, it's scary, bro. It's scary. It's a big place, and for anybody that's listening and that that's performed at halftime shows or in arenas like that or whatever, it's big. It's a big energy, man. And there's some cats that do it a lot, and they know what it's like. It's wow, it's something else. But the whole experience for me was just really surreal. Being in the garden with no people there is crazy. It's empty, and it's like me and the production team, like sound checking, and then all of a sudden, here come these basketball players to do their warm up, and they're like literally twice as big as me, and they're like looking at me like I'm like the small strange alien in the middle of the court, like bouncing balls on a drum and making fart sounds with my mouth, and they're like, "What is this guy doing?" But they did stop and check it out, and they were like, "Hey, all right, that's not bad, man. That's really weird, but it's cool." But there's something, just crazy experience, just being in the garden where it's empty. But right before I was doing my show, I was backstage in my green room, and this kind of plays into the performance nerves that I was talking about a bit ago, because we all get nerves. It's a part of being human and going on stage or going in front of a group of other human beings to do something quote unquote amazing or incredible or impressive or whatnot. You're ultimately seeking that validation from them, or you're going to receive judgment. No matter what your mindset is, you're going to be receiving judgment, because that's what we do as humans. It's not a good or bad thing or right or wrong. It just is. But right before showtime, man, I got so nervous, and my wife was with me. And my wife, AKA my sanity goddess, is a very grounded human being. She's just amazing. Cindy Harvell Lee, she's just incredible. And she was with me. And I'm like, in the moment, I'm like, I'm so ready to be done with this. I'm so ready to be finished with this moment and just get out of here and get away. And she's like, whoa. What? You're ready for this moment to be over? She's like, this is what you've been working for. You've put in thousands of hours of practice. You've done shows, you've done training, you've done all this to be at this moment. This is your moment. This is like, to me, it's like the moment of, and this is for the geeks out there, or the nerds, for Neverending Story. Neverending Story was a great movie back in the day when I was a kid, 80s, I think. And it was like this movie where Atreyu comes to the gates of the Southern Oracle, and it's like his moment to like make this decision, and it's like scary. It's like, do I go through? Do I give up? Do I prevail? In the face of evil and fear and doubt. And it's this moment of you're at the gates here, And so in that moment, I had a choice to make. And I think ultimately the choices we make today dictate the people we become tomorrow. And the only difference between, me and playing this piano and somebody that's not is that I'm playing this piano. That's the only difference. It's like I'm just doing it. I say yes, I touch it, I do it, I practice, I put in the time, I say yes, I step up to that vulnerable moment. So in this moment, I'm super nervous, right? And my wife is like, snap out of it, man. This is your moment. And I'm like, yeah. And something switches in my mind, and then I sink into my routine or my ritual. And when I sink into my routine and my ritual, I go into, I come back to the breath. I come back to breathing, like I was talking about with David Nair. And I come back to the very simple human things of breathing, of counting, of grounding. I do some push-ups. I do some sit-ups. I do my warm-up. I start to bounce. I go into my routine, my ritual that I've created. And by the time I finish this, it gets me in this space where my mind, body, spirit are all connected. And what I mean by that is by catalyzing my chi, getting my energy going, warming up my body physically, my biceps, triceps, whatever, all that stuff. I get myself warmed up physically. That gets me in an essence place where I am energetically, spiritually ready, which gets my mind prepared, so I'm able to focus, which like works all together. It's this 3-in-1 combo pack, and then by the time I'm doing my routine, which is maybe a half hour of warm up, my production manager comes backstage. She's like, "Are you ready to go?" And I'm like, yeah, and I'm like, this brave heart, like, I'm like pumped up for like war, it's like a war cry. And she's like, well, alrighty then. And so then I go out and I enter this moment in this state of mind where I've essentially summoned my inner strength. I've summoned my personal power. I've summoned that thing inside of us, because my belief is that you can't control forces that are outside of you, but you have the ability to control how you react to them and how you show up and what you project onto a situation. And so in that moment, I'm going up against this wall of energy, this massive wall of energy that's at this sporting event with 20 or 30,000 people who don't know who I am, and don't really probably care about me, but I'm coming into there with an attitude where I'm like, that's fine. That doesn't matter, because I'm here to be my greatest, most powerful, most authentic self. And that's all that matters. And I'm going to be here. I'm going to be grounded, and I'm going to be fully present in the moment. And so I go out there, man, and I just like address the crowd. I get hype. I ground out, and I sink into my routine. I'm connected in the moment. I'm fully present. And the energy was incredible. The best way I can describe it is that it felt like this vortex of like rainbow energy. It's just like I felt like I was in this eye of a storm somehow. This place, this like peaceful place of relaxation, and the temperature was cool and crisp, and everything was illuminated. Everything was bright and shiny, and it was like this mindset, like I had been meditating, which I had been. Like I had been in deep meditation, and it was like I was just aware, and I could hear people behind me and like 70 rows up to the left, and I could hear everybody. I was aware of them all, but I was also grounded, and I had done the rehearsal. I had practiced so much that my routine was on autopilot, or in that automaticity mode, to where I could just sink into it, and then I could be fully present in the moment. And man, it rocked. It was a great experience. Rocked the house. Ran off stage, super pumped, and then people over there giving high fives, and we're just having a blast. And then I go backstage. Production manager's happy. My wife is like, "That's right. See, there you go. That was it." And then I was like super just grateful for my wife, for my support team, because in life we can't do anything ourselves. I believe that you don't do anything by yourself. And so grateful for a support team, grateful for all of my coaches that had come before me that reminded me of how to ground out, that reminded me of how to sink into that ritual or that routine to mentally prepare, physically prepare, emotionally prepare for that moment, and that ultimately ended up a very successful part of my career.
All right. That was a great answer to that question. One last question before we get to some quick quick fire ones. And that is for those who are aspiring to be professional, like performers in juggling. What are a couple of words of advice or caution you have for them?
Oh yeah. First one is just do it, man. Like if you're thinking about it, stop thinking about it. Just do it. Create opportunities. It doesn't have to be on a big stage in front of a big audience for a big amount of money or whatever. Everybody's got their own, their own drives and desires and motivations behind performance. But I just say do it. Get out there. Obviously, you get out in the street and do it. You don't need a permit unless you need a permit. But certain places you do. But go out on the street corner and just do something, whatever that is. And I don't mean necessarily street perform to busk. I don't mean to make money. I mean just to get out there in front of people. That can be at your friend's birthday party. That can be at your create an event, create an opportunity to do that. Nobody's going to create any opportunity for you without you doing. Like my belief is that I create the doors of opportunity for myself. In fact, I am the doors of opportunity for myself. And if I do nothing, I get nothing. If I always do what I've always done, I'm always going to get what I've always got or gotten, whatever. See, grammar, whatever. But I believe that we create our own realities, and my quote that I always like to use is, life isn't really about finding yourself. It's about creating yourself. And so I think if you just create those opportunities, have a party, have people over and say, I'm going to juggle for you or perform for you guys. And so just do it like anytime. And when the spirit moves or if you're not in a spirit, when the time feels right, when that moment presents itself, I call it universal timing, just say yes, because that's the moment. That's the showdown or the showtime. That's the moment that you've created. And that can be anywhere. That can be at the park, that could be at the party. That could be at the frickin' in line at the deli. I don't know, at the grocery store picking up fruit. I don't know, whatever. But just create those opportunities and let go of any expectation that you might have or that we might have, one might have. That's for myself too. Let go of any expectation of what you might believe it should or shouldn't be. Just release that. That's just ego getting in the way, and just release that ego and say, I'm just going to allow, I'm just going to be. And it can happen anywhere at any time. Words of caution: don't listen to the ego mind. Don't overanalyze things. I mean, there's a time and place to analyze, for sure. We want to have that scientific mind. We want to have that microscopic perspective. We want to be able to dissect things. But we also need to have that other shade of our personality or mode that we go into where we release that and we experience what I call real life jazz, which is my belief is there's moments when it's time to solo, there's moments when it's time to listen, and there's moments where it's time to just allow the moment to unfold. And so just to show up and be present in those moments and allow those moments, to force them. So not getting caught up in the ego, not getting caught up in watching YouTube videos and saying, there's so many amazing people out there that are so good, I'm never going to be as good as them. That's a big pitfall that we all find ourselves in. I've found myself in that as well. Like I said, when I saw Viktor Kee for the first time, I was like inspired and despired. And that's where my ego mind's saying, you're never going to be like that. You're bad. You can't even juggle 3 balls in a cascade or whatever. Release that. People are at different places at different times. And like, just be in the moment. Just be human. Release that thought of having to be something, needing to be something, and just be where you're at, And so to not get caught up in that mindset of that person's so good, comparing yourself to other people. You're your own person. You have your own story, your own experience, your own energy, your own everything, so just be yourself, and then that ultimately is going to serve you if you do choose to pursue performance, right? Which is one avenue of juggling or of using juggling. Juggling has so many values. To me, it's a personal therapy. It's a personal outlet for me to plug into, for me to release. It's a moving meditation for me. It's a way to create more white matter or myelin to enhance my brain development. It's a way to connect and create community with other people in the IJA or whatever the organization. It has a lot of different outlets, but if you choose to pursue it as a performance career or performance path, then your personality is going to serve you majorly. And that means your strengths, your weaknesses, your flaws, your vulnerability, any life experience you have can show up and be a strength in that particular environment. So that's a couple of answers. I have many more, but let's hold it at that and do the rap. Because you mentioned rapid fire. I think that was like hey, can you soundbite a little?
No, these are questions I ask everybody. It's how I end all of them. So,
awesome.
All right. So, what's your favorite trick or pattern to do?
Favorite trick or pattern to do? Oh man, I have to pick one? Are you
Just
kidding?
One. Just one.
What, do people answer this? Do people have this? Wow, how do you have one? Come on, man. Geez, gosh, one pattern.
All right, one of them. How about that? One of your favorite tricks or patterns.
I suppose my favorite pattern to practice, it's a personal drill, is the 7-ball force bounce.
Okay.
That's my favorite. That's just like a good, strong, challenging pattern that really keeps me on my toes and creates immediately a sense of metacognition of like, where am I at today, right now in this moment, which is also another thing of each day is a new day. And no matter what we did yesterday, today, and especially when we're doing more technically advanced tricks or tricks that are skills that are pushing our boundaries, it really lets you know where you're at today. You know, did you have a good breakfast? Did you have a good cup of coffee? Did you have a good workout? Did you, you know, where are you at mentally? Are you present? Are you breathing? Are you grounded? All that stuff shows up when it's go time. And so 7-ball force bounce is my favorite personal development and challenging trick.
All right, great. What about to watch?
To watch, my favorite juggler.
Favorite juggling trick or pattern to watch.
Favorite trick to I mean, Mill's mess is just standard quality. It's just it's pretty awesome.
That's a great answer. Oh.
Okay, let's go with that. Okay, I was gonna go off a tangent about Doug Sayers, but anyway, let's not do that. I love Doug, by the way. Doug's awesome. I don't know if you know Doug, but he's a buddy of mine and a super great juggler. And he does some incredible stuff. And when he lands into 5 club back crosses, bro, I'm like, that's the jizam right there. So, yeah. Anyway, but let's keep it at Mill's mess and forget that I mentioned Doug Sayers and 5 club back crosses.
Okay. For anybody that's watching and they've been seeing little hands, it's my little daughter. She's awake. Which means she's going to be screaming in a second.
Yeah. Good time.
All right. Favorite festival you've been to?
Favorite festival? Oh man, I gotta say there's 2. I'm sorry, there's 2. The Austin Festival where I met David Nayer, and the other one is the IJA up in Quebec City this last year, 2015, which was incredible.
All right. Favorite prop to use? As if we don't know already.
Yeah, come on. Silicone bounce balls.
Okay, and what brand?
I actually use PropWorks.
Warps. Okay.
Yeah, PropWorks. I know Dubé does some, and I think there's maybe another couple companies out there, but those are my favorite. The silicone from PropWorks. Yeah.
Okay. Favorite music to listen to when you're practicing?
Favorite music to listen to when I'm practicing? That's a good one. It depends on my mood, bro. Come on, you're giving me all these questions. I can't answer this. I would say consistently, I listen to stuff that's up tempo, maybe like a drum and bass, funk, fusion type stuff. Yeah.
This has been an awesome conversation. You've really brought it. There's been so many nuggets of wisdom. So just thanks again for coming on. And,
you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And you have the final word. So, well, one, where can people find you? And then some words of inspiration to the juggling community at large.
Oh, wow. Okay. No pressure, right? Be amazing now. Be inspiring now. um, yeah. So people can find me at my website, which is bronkar.com. That's BRONKAR.com. And if you want to remember it in a song, it's BRONKAR. He's the beatbox man, and his name is Bronkar. um, so that's my website, and I'm on YouTube and have all that fun stuff out there. And then, geez, I guess leaving it with words of wisdom. Words of wisdom would be yourself always. Be your authentic self, and just bring your most authentic self to any situation that you come into. And really that real life jazz, man, of knowing when it's time to listen, knowing when it's time to solo, and when it's time to allow the moment to unfold. Because there's so much to learn out there, and there's so much to share, and just creating community, and especially in our juggling community, there's so many incredible people out there. And also, if you're looking to learn something, reach out to some of these people. Maybe you're a younger juggler or a newer juggler or somebody that doesn't know people, but I know the people that I've reached out to have been super receptive. And jugglers are cool, And so reach out to these people on Facebook or whatnot if you have questions. People are more accessible than you think. And my friend and another mentor that I want to mention is a guy named Bill Barr, who's an old school IJA guy. And Bill Barr says, there's two kinds of people, Bronkar. There's people that'll talk to you and people that won't. And the quickest way to find out what type of person they are is to go talk to them. So that's my advice.
All right. Thanks for that advice.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this conversation that we just had with Bronkar Lee, the beatboxing juggler. And until next time, keep on juggling.
Thanks for watching. If you like what you saw, be sure to support the channel. Leave a comment, like, share, and subscribe.